It started with laughing and almost ended with lawyers. Islands in the Stream was regarded for years as one of the most fun duets ever made. A love song that was so smooth and easy that it made everyone think Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers had bottled lightning in the studio. But there was a storm developing quietly beneath the happiness, the easy grins and the sweet harmonies. Three music giants who were friends almost got into a court war over who owned what, who got paid, and who got respect. Dolly Parton was at the center of it all. She was the only woman in country music who wouldn't let the man who created the song quiet her. Many admirers didn't know it. They heard the interviews, saw the smiles, and read the beautiful stories of friendship. But they didn't witness the contracts, licensing deals, or private phone discussions between lawyers. Dolly knew something was wrong when the money started coming in, and the songs started showing up in places she didn't want it to. There was a lot of talk about her, but her name was hard to find, and the person she blamed wasn't Kenny Rogers, her duet partner. Barry Gibb of the Bee Gees was the man behind the song. Things grew so bad for a while that friends of both stars spoke about suing each other. And even though no documents were ever filed, the rumors were true. They were signs. If the following phone call had gone differently, the world might have seen something that was hard to believe. In court, Dolly Parton and Barry Gibb are fighting. You're watching Retro Waves, where the biggest events in music history come to life. Let's go back to the tune that almost ruined a wonderful duet. The Gibb brothers ran a studio in Miami that was far away from Nashville. After the disco backlash in the late 1970s, Barry Robin and Maurice Gibb were striving to change who they were. Their songs had been #1 all over the world, but by 1983, disco was a bad word and radio stations were turning against them. So Barry looked for something new and softer. He started to write for other musicians. Islands in the Stream was one of the tunes. Barry composed it for Marvin Gaye as a smooth, soulful R&B song based on an Ernest Hemingway novel of the same name, but fate had other designs. Barry was also making a new record for Kenny Rogers at the same time. It was called Eyes That See in the Dark. He played the song for Kenny. Kenny kind of liked it. Later, he said, "We tried it, but it just didn't feel right. I didn't like how it sounded." Kenny tried to sing it by himself. It didn't work. He tried to move it around. Nothing yet. He was ready to give up after a few fruitless tries. At that point, Barry had a crazy thought. What if it was a duet? He said. Someone in the studio. But no one knows who said two words that changed everything. Dolly Parton, who just happened to be in the same city, stepped into the studio a few hours later. She was glowing, confident, and had no idea she was about to create history. Kenny later remembered that scene quite clearly. The energy changed as soon as she walked in. We started over from the beginning. And as soon as she sang her first line, it all made sense. It was like magic. They got it right the first time. When Islands in the Stream came out in August 1983, it shot to the top of the country charts and Billboard's Hot 100. It was one of the few songs that could be played in every genre at once. It became one of the best-selling duets of all time in pop, country, and adult contemporary music. But as the plot had stopped, the work began. Dolly and Kenny were the voices, while Barry was the owner. And ownership of music is where the problems always start. You need to know how the music business works to understand why Dolly almost sued Barry. You control the publication rights when you write a song. The master recording is a whole different right when you record it. Through their company, Gibb Brothers Music, Barry Gibb and his brothers Robin and Maurice acquired the rights to publish. That meant they decided where the song could be played, how it could be utilized, and who got paid when it was performed or licensed. Dolly and Kenny, on the other hand, were hired to sing, not to write songs. They got compensated for the recording sessions and made money from sales and radio play of that version. The Baggies get the long-term publication profits, though usually that wouldn't have been a problem. Dolly knew more about the company than most others. She created her business by preserving her own publishing, and she was famous for keeping the rights to I Will Always Love You. Dolly started to get worried when Islands in the Stream started showing up in compilations, commercial syncs, and medleys, sometimes without her permission. This was because her voice, which was unmistakably hers, was being exploited in ways she hadn't agreed to. In one example, It was said that an international compilation used her voice without letting her team know ahead of time. That's when the first signs of stress showed up. Barry wasn't the one making those choices. The publishing department was. But Dolly didn't care. They were using her picture, her sound, and her voice without her permission. And if there's one thing Dolly Parton won't put up with, it's losing that influence over her work. People who knew her, well, said she was really angry. Nor loud nor violent, but cold and resolute. Anger. She felt like she had been hit by a truck. A source in Nashville stated she loved Barry, but was upset with the way her work was being done. It wasn't about the money. It was about honor. For a while, she attempted to deal with it without making a fuss. Then, when the licenses kept growing and her bosses noticed transactions they hadn't cleared, lawyers started to come up. And then, all of a sudden, this lovely duet didn't seem so pleasant anymore. Islands in the Stream had become more than a hit by 1985. It was an important time in culture. It was played at diners, came out of jukeboxes, and even made it into movie soundtracks. But behind all that accomplishment, the wheels of business were turning. Dolly's wheels hadn't turned. Her boss told her something one day that shocked her. A number of compilation albums that came out in Europe used Islands in the Stream, without even calling to say thank you. Dolly's team hadn't signed off, looked over contracts, or been asked for their opinion. And even though Barry, Robin, and Maurice owned the publishing rights to the song, Dolly thought a performance gave her some rights as well. After all, her voice was on the master recording. So she called someone else, not Barry Gibb, at least not yet. She called her lawyers first. Within a few days, a discreet but serious conversation started between her team and the Bee's publishing office. Lawyers began to exchange papers and words like mechanical royalties and master licensing. At first, everyone was nice, but things got tense when Dolly didn't ask for special treatment. She wanted everyone to respect her. She wasn't merely a singer. She was one of the main reasons the song became famous. People she'd never met were making decisions about her voice and how it sounded. People who knew her well say she was peaceful but strong. I don't want anyone to utilize my voice without my permission, she informed her team. I worked too hard to give that up. Barry, on the other hand, had no idea any of this was going on. He was busy making music for other artists and had no idea that one of his most successful collaborations was about to become a legal nightmare. When he got the news, things were already tight. There was a lot of uncertainty, anger, and injured sentiments. He is said to have contacted Dolly through a mutual friend to attempt to make things better. But by then the lawyers were already working on the case. And once they're involved, it's impossible to halt the momentum. You need to know one thing about Dolly to understand why she behaved the way she did. She has made a name for herself by owning things. Elvis Presley wanted to record her song, I Will Always Love You, in the 1970s. Dolly was overjoyed until Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's manager, asked for half of the publication rights. Dolly said no. People thought she was crazy for saying no to Elvis, but she stuck to her guns. Whitney Houston sang the song years later and made it one of the biggest hits of all time. Dolly made millions of dollars and got the admiration of the whole music business. It hit her the same way when she watched Islands in the Stream being used without her. She may not have authored it, but she gave it life. People reported she informed her staff in private. If I sing it, it's part of me. You don't just give things out like a piece of paper. Her lawyers looked into what they could do. Could they say they had performers' rights under U.S. and international law? Could they limit who can get a license for the master recording? They wrote letters, not lawsuits, but legal warnings that were strong enough to get the point over. And Barry's friends got that message. Barry Gibb was very surprised. He really liked Dolly. He has mentioned several times that she was the easiest person to work with. No drama, no ego, just pure brilliance. To hear that she was upset made me feel like it was about me. One of Barry's friends said that Barry quickly offered to talk to her personally to clear things up, but Dolly didn't want to talk to him at first. She wanted her lawyers to do things the right way. It wasn't about being mad. It was about limits. Dolly has always been tough, even though she has a gentle chuckle and a southern charm. She commented once, I might look fake, but I'm real where it counts. And in this situation, that realness meant business. Islands in the Stream had made millions by 1986. It was still at the top of the charts around the world, and both Dolly and Kenny were singing it live to fans. But the money side of things, including the publishing, royalties, and residuals, had gotten messy. Barry Gibb's publishing company was in charge of fresh licensing requests from Europe and Asia. Some were easy, while others were not. Dolly's management team looked over the royalty accounts and saw that there were problems, such as missing royalties, confusing performance rights, and foreign usage not being tracked appropriately. For most artists, that's merely a formality. But for Dolly, every smell meant ownership, not greed or power. People who were with her stated she felt like she was watching a pattern she knew repeat. Men making choices about her art, and believing she would just go along. But she wasn't the same small-town singer who came to Nashville with a guitar and a dream. She was Dolly Parton, a world-famous singer and businesswoman who controlled her own publishing firm, film studio, and brand. And she was ready to tell everyone that. This time, her lawyers wrote a different letter that was stronger. They didn't come right out and say they would sue, but they did hint at it. Words like violation, misuse, and potential damages started to show up in letters. Those words were enough.